All right, so we're going to go through and we're going to finish up the last of our body systems. I'm so glad that y'all have watched all the previous videos and that y'all went through and completed your notes. Hopefully, y'all don't have any questions about the body systems, but if you do, feel free to email me or send me a message on Schoology, and I'll go ahead and get back to you because the body systems are really interesting. And something I've been telling my classes, if you're really interested in the body systems, then maybe in the future, whenever you're a junior or when you're a senior, you do have the opportunity to take a class called Anatomy and Physiology. And in that class, they go over all these different body systems and do a lot of dissections. And, it's a tough class, but it's really cool because you can really explore the human body in a lot of depth. So let's go ahead and get started. We have 3 systems left. So the first one we're going to talk about is our digestive system. So when we're talking about our digestive system, we have multiple organs. And so we're going to be starting up with our mouth. So mouth begins your digestion. Okay? So not only do you have mastication, mastication is the process of chewing. You also have enzymes in the saliva that aid in breaking down your food. Okay, so that's why, like, when you put some food in your mouth, like if it's, a cracker or a chip or something like that, it starts to get soggy because you have enzymes breaking it down. So besides our mouth, because we're just talking about major organs, we also have our stomach. Okay, so we have acid in our stomach, and muscles help break down food. We also have our small intestine. And small intestine is primarily responsible for absorbing nutrients, while our large intestine absorbs water. Okay, so that's the difference between our small and our large intestine. Our small intestine is super long because we want to absorb as many nutrients as possible from our food. Our large intestine, it's responsible for compacting everything that's left and absorbing the water. So I'm going to be posting up a video as well that goes along with the digestive system. That way you can see the pathway that food actually takes throughout our body. So besides these major organs, let's go ahead and talk really quick about our function. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here. Okay, and my function of my digestive system, is to basically digest. I have 2 types of digestion though. I have physical digestion, which is chewing and grinding, which is what our stomach does. Whenever it's churning, it's trying to, churn up our food. And then I have chemical digestion. So that's things like enzymes and stomach acid. So the purpose, oops, I misspelled enzymes. So the purpose of this is to break down food to be absorbed by our cells. Okay, so we're getting nutrients, we're getting vitamins, we're getting the building blocks, of what we need. So hopefully you remember biomolecules when we talked about monomers and polymers. So when we're eating food, we're eating polymers, and then those polymers can get broken down into monomers. We use those monomers to create our own polymers. That way we can, build, repair, replace cells. So that's the function of our digestive system. So next, I'm going to talk about our reproductive system. Okay, so our reproductive system, I'm just going to be very brief, especially because I don't have a chance to talk to you all about this. Okay, so for our reproductive system, okay, so right here, I'm going to go ahead and type in my major organs and functions. Okay, so I know that my functions are to create offspring and controls male and female functions and behavior. Okay, so, we've already talked about the endocrine system. We talked about having estrogen and testosterone, and those are our sex hormones. And so those sex hormones are going to determine whether or not an individual is going to be producing male or female organs, as well as different types of behavior, different patterns, in their hormone expression and things like that. And so with our, reproductive system, the primary function for all of this is to eventually create offspring. So once you have an offspring, they go through their own set of development, and then eventually they will, their reproductive system will kick in and they will go through sexual maturity. So when we're talking about, our major organs for our male and female structures, okay, so for our male, okay, we have the penis, okay, which is our, main reproductive organ. We have the testes, which is responsible for producing testosterone, and it's also responsible for sperm production. And then, of course, we have the scrotum. I'm not going to get into too much detail. The scrotum is a protective covering for the testes. And there's also a lot of, tubules, a lot of glands and things like that that are also part of the male reproductive system. My female reproductive system, okay, we have the ovaries. Okay, so the ovaries are where the eggs are housed. Okay, and little interesting fact: when women are born, they're born already, with all the eggs they're ever going to have. Those eggs are immature, and then through a process called meiosis, those eggs will mature. And so, they have a limited amount of eggs, but males, once they reach sexual maturity, they actually have an unlimited amount of sperm. So that's something that is different. So female, we have our ovaries, we have our uterus. Okay, so the uterus is the location where a developing fetus would be. And so that uterus, has to have a very large blood supply in order to create that placenta and that umbilical cord, so that way that baby is nourished. So we have the ovaries, the uterus, and then we also have the vagina, which is the pathway. It's also known as the birth canal from the uterus out. Okay, so those are our major organs for the reproductive systems. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll on up, okay, where I do have some pictures here. So on the left, I have a representation of the male reproductive system. So I have, for example, my penis that has that tube. You could see that really long tube that runs from the testes all the way out. And so this is just showing the reproductive system. So there are other structures in, the body, that are around these systems. But you can see the testes has, is housed in that scrotum. And so that epididymis, which, helps that testes transport their sperm have a very long way to go because that tube goes over the bladder and exits through the penis. Not only that, but you can also see the bladder does connect at some point to that same tube. And so you have a gland called that seminal vesicle, and the seminal vesicle actually helps the sperm to survive because typically urine's very acidic and it could kill sperm. And so then we have the seminal vesicle there to excrete some fluid, so that way it just helps with sperm survival. On the right, I have a female reproductive system. And so you can see right here, so on either side, we have our ovaries, and the ovaries are typically very small, but that's where our immature eggs are housed. And then once a month, one of those eggs will be selected for maturation, and it will mature and travel down the fallopian tube. So if that egg is fertilized, that fertilized egg will implant in the uterus. And so, implant in the uterus, create that umbilical cord with the placenta, and, then that uterus will house a developing baby. And so the uterus is actually very stretchy. It's made to accommodate a baby as it's growing. And so if that egg is not fertilized, then there's a layer called the endometrium, and that layer will actually be shed every single month through the menses cycle. And then at the bottom of the uterus, there's the cervix, and the cervix just is there to help for protection against bacteria and anything that could damage the uterus. And then the vagina, which is the birth canal. So lastly, we're going to talk about our excretory system. Okay, so our excretory system has to do with filtration of things that are inside of our body. They filter our blood, help create our urine, things like that. So this is things like our kidneys, our bladder, our urethra, our renal arteries, all of those things. And they're highly specialized. So, whenever we take in, food and drink, our kidneys try to extract as much water as possible. And, it's continuously filling our bladder. But that way, our blood could also be filtered and we can get rid of any waste products that we might have. So let's go down here to major organs and functions. So our function is that it disposes of waste products and controls body fluid levels. Okay, so the more you drink, the more you have to urinate. And so you can see the kidneys are attached to your bladder through a tube called a ureter. And so an interesting fact, so as long as you're, normally hydrated, your kidney is actually always dripping urine from the kidney down the ureter into the bladder. And so over a period of time, your bladder does gradually fill. But that's also why sometimes, maybe you go to the restroom and maybe a couple minutes later, it feels like you have to go again. And that's because that kidney is always filtering, water through. And so urine is always traveling into your bladder constantly. So it helps control body fluid levels. And our major organs are going to be our kidneys, okay, which are responsible for filtering blood. Okay, our sweat glands are actually part of the excretory system. Lungs, okay, because we do exhale a little bit of water vapor. Okay. And of course, our large intestine, which is responsible for extracting water through our digestive system. So I hope you all enjoyed all of this, all of our journey through the body systems. Congratulations, we've gone over everything. So make sure you fill out these notes because these notes will be taken for a completion grade, at the end of this week. Make sure you study these. And at the end of the week, we're also going to have a very small assessment just to test your knowledge over the body systems. If you have any questions, send me a message through email or through Schoology. And I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.